Hey everybody, my name is Vannoy and I'm a member of Al-Anon. Hi y'all. Well, it's an absolute privilege to be here. I want to thank the STC group and the committee. I never did see the committee, but I think there was supposed to be a committee somewhere, for inviting me. I always want to remember that it's a privilege. It's an absolute privilege, isn't it, to be up here, and that someone trusts you enough to get up in front of people and actually talk. So I want to thank you, Beth and Carol and Carol and Carol and Carol and the other Carol, and they have just been extremely, extremely kind to me, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. They've wined and dined me. And yes, they did feed me a hot pepper. I couldn't talk for about an hour. I couldn't breathe for about 30 minutes, and I'm from Texas, and I eat hot peppers all my life, but this one, it brung me down. Whew. I came into this magnificent fellowship of ours February the 7th of 1969. My home group is the Stepped Up group in Los Angeles. I'm there every Monday and every Thursday night. My committed open AA meeting is the Pacific group. It meets on Wednesday nights, and I'm there every Wednesday night unless I work too late to get there. My sponsor I do have a sponsor, and she has 36.5 years in the fellowship. She's still extremely active. I'm flying her out to my group. She'll be there Wednesday. She's going to give me my birthday cake at my group Thursday night. And I want to tell you, I've had a phenomenal month already, or 2 weeks, whatever it is. I have been at a level of humility that I didn't know I could. I mean, I am not humble. And I had just been overwhelmed by the absolutely outpouring of things that has come my way the last couple of weeks. It's just been awesome. Some of my older sponsorees got together and decided I did not want a party. I had a big, huge 25th party. It was magnificent. Many of you in this room were there, and my husband was there, and my daughter was there, and they kind of put this thing together. And my husband died on me 3 years ago, and my daughter is in Oklahoma, and it was just one of those times in my life, and I really didn't. Let's just let this settle. And so they decided that they'd contact everybody, people that I sponsor, and the people that they sponsor, and the people that they sponsor, and on and on and on. And I've totally lost count. But I would suspect that I have had, in the last 2 weeks, at least 500 cards from all over this country and other countries. And I read these cards and I think, Jiminy crickets, I mean, they're going to find out, you know. And the things that's been said and come my way it's just been awesome. And there's a new gal here, and I don't know how many is new, but there's one, and I'm going to talk to her. A lot of y'all have heard me so many times, but stay awake. Her name is Mary, and she's just got a few months. And when you've got a few months, somebody that's got 30 years sounds like very boring, doesn't it? I mean, God, I remember when I was new and somebody had 10 years, I thought, what do they know? So 30 years sounds like a long time, but I'll tell you, it doesn't seem like to me, but just a little bit. One of the girls come up to my group one night, and she said, how old were you when you came in? And I told her, and she said, do you know you've had more time in the program now than you had before? And it was kind of disappointing to realize that. I thought, I wish you hadn't told me that, Chris. Now I got to quit whining. You know, it's like, I've had 30 years here of magnificent magnificence. And it hadn't been all good, let me tell you. It has not. There's been life has been going on, and I need it today just as much as I did that first time I walked in, and sometimes more so. I love the way we change. I've got lots of friends here, and well, I don't mean to be grandiose or show off or whatever it is, but I sponsor 3 girls that's in this room. Would those 3 girls stand up? It's this Carol and this Carol and Arlene. Now that's the 3 that I sponsor. Now would the people they sponsor stand up? And would the people that they sponsor stand up? And on and on and on. If you're in this line of sponsorship, would you stand up? Look at this. Now, isn't that incredible? This is incredible. It's incredible from these 3 girls, this many people. Or else y'all are really sick up here in Nebraska. So you see how this thing works. I mean, I got a sponsor, I sponsor these 3, and then look what happened. It's just incredible here, and it's a family, and I'm just in awe. I'm telling you, I'm just in awe about who we are and what we are and the magnificence of this fellowship, and people like Reggie can stay 23 years sober. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, that's awesome. And this beautiful thing, I mean, that was a great story. I love when the kids get in fight. You know, my kid, I had a boy and a girl, and they fought, you know, and she'd call me and he just knocked out a window, or he'd call and she just locked him out of the door. And, you know, it's just all those things. And when you get here and somebody else's kids does it, you don't feel so bad, do you? It's like, oh, yeah. So I consider it an honor to be up here. I truly, truly do, and it's a privilege. I was sitting here at this sick bunch here, let me tell you. You know, if you get too puffy around here about, you know, you're really something, you got 30 years. She gave me a surprise. Carol was going to give me a surprise coffee last night, and then she showed me the flyer beforehand, hoping I didn't read it. I mean, please. So we got over to her house last night, and it was just jammed. We couldn't go in the front door, so we went in the back door, and there's a little den there, and some of the half-measure guys was down here in the den. Of course, I was excited, so I started hugging everybody, and one of Bill's goons, I came over to him, and he sneered, and he said, well, who are you? Trust me, son, you will pay for that. I sponsor your sponsor's wife. We're sitting here talking, and I remember when this group right here was talking about relationships. Tonight we're talking about what diets we're on. I mean, it's kind of sad, isn't it? I came in at the Central group in Lubbock, Texas. I was born and raised in Lubbock. I had a mom and daddy, and I had 3 brothers. We were poor. Everybody's poor back then, I guess. And a good family. My dad's part Indian from Oklahoma. My mom came from a divorced family, and they didn't get divorced back then. They just didn't. So she was always, as long as I can remember, my mother was full of shame and shamed you. And that's the word she would use. Well, I'll shame her into whatever. And I didn't discover it until just a few years ago that my grandpa, who ran off with the bitch, never heard her name, never saw her. My grandmother would say, the bitch. And my grandmother was Southern Baptist, and she never cussed except the bitch. And he died with me seeing him one time in my entire life. And I discovered only a few years ago he was a drunk. I don't know why anybody put that, two and two together. So my mother is this untreated Al-Anon all my life. And she didn't like me much, and I didn't like her much. But we loved each other, and I always trying to get that approval from my mother from the time I was get-go. And my mother never liked me, and I didn't find out till just recently. Why? I went to school. My brothers went to school. We came home, and that was it. I mean, we didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything. We went to school. We come home. When I was a little bitty girl, I think I was either in kindergarten or first grade, we went to Oklahoma for a vacation, and my oldest brother, broke his neck. And it was way back when they didn't have anything like they do today. They didn't have striker frames that, that turns these paraplegic people, and he was paralyzed from the waist down, and they drilled holes in his skull and put a traction on him, and he was in Oklahoma for a while, and then they finally brought him back to Texas, and finally got back to the house. It was just like 2 years before he really was back in the house. And in those 2 years, and somewhat longer, I was left to stay with an aunt and uncle from time to time, and then some friends who lived out on the farm, and family friends. And I just was not in a family. There was no family. We were all scattered. I don't know where my other brothers were, but we just weren't together. And I remember what my house was like. My house was just quiet, and if there was anything going on, it was fighting. Mother and Daddy were under such stress. He lost his business. He had a little used furniture business, and he lost that. I didn't have any friends come over because they weren't allowed. Plus, my house smelled bad. My brother had this rotting flesh, and they put this brown gook over it. It was real thick gook. I don't know what it was, but it smelled bad. And he had what they call a rubber urinal, and you couldn't wash it out, you couldn't clean it, so the smell of stale urine, and just it was hot. We didn't have air conditioners, and there was a fan blowing on him, and in the summer you can just imagine with all this, and I was embarrassed, and I didn't want anybody there. And so I sat out on the streets, and I sat out with the older girls. They were 12, 13, and they taught me things. One of them had her mother's boyfriend's book, and we looked at it, and I saw things that I didn't even know existed, and it scared me to death. I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9, something. And they were telling me about things you could do and not. I had a really good education in my garage in the alley about life from the older girls. It was just really incredible. Shortly after that, I don't know how old I was, but I always went with the older girls because they were wise, This girl named Chick lived down the street from me. You reminded me of her when you said fireman, Madeline, because her daddy was the chief of the fireman people there, and I thought she was a good girl, so I just did whatever thing she did, and she introduced me to my first West Texas honky tonk. And I walked in there with her, and it had this old rotten flesh smell. It had stale urine smell, and stale vomit smell, and sawdust, and God, it was like walking into home. I felt really good. This is a great place to be. It's confident, it's comfortable, it feels familiar, and I liked it. And pretty soon the band came out, and they were playing way too loud, and there was a big old ball in the middle. You know how they used to have those big balls that went around in dance floors and had lights, colored lights. There was little mirrors on it, I think, and some of those were broken, and so it, just. But something just kicked in. I mean, the first night that I was in a honky tonk, something kicked in. It was exciting. I mean, my blood pressure went up, and I was looking and seeing what was happening, and it was just, stuff was happening in there. I couldn't tell you exactly what it was, but stuff was happening. The air was just, it was just kind of like it is in an AA meeting today. When you come into an AA room, an open AA meeting, there's just something going on. Nobody's telling the truth probably, and there's just, and there's excitement here. And I just started kind of itching, and I'm telling you, I'm getting goosebumps right now. I mean, there's something about a honky-tonk today, this day, that's magic to me. When that thing kicked in, I looked around to see what you're supposed to do. I watched the older girls again. And it's real simple what they do there. The guys come in and they sit over here on the bar. And they drink. And the gals go over here and sit at the tables. And about 11-ish, the guys start slipping off the stools, you know, and then they start looking over here at the other side of the room, and they get this glint in their eye, you know, and you're supposed to have picked out which one you want. My friend Jim Williams, bless his heart, if you don't know, he died a couple of weeks ago, and he said, if you line 10 pretty girls up against a wall, he said, I'd pick the sickest one every time. And I said to him, Jim, you never have figured it out. The sickest one takes one step forward. And if there's one of you slick alcoholics in here today thinks you picked her out, no. She has seen you cross the room, and she has maneuvered herself so that you could see her and get that glint in her eye and shyly look away. You have not picked one. I don't care what you think. And there's a little competition that goes on if you see another one looking at your hem. It's usually the blonde. It's probably not real either. So you got to start you got to think, and you got to act, and you got to be prepared, because this is important stuff going on here. Because I discovered that you could be held out there. I mean, I've never been held or hugged that I ever remember in my lifetime. Ever. Took an inventory on it, and the first time I ever remember being touched and held by another human being was at the honky-tonk. My bed was in the dining room of my house. Had a little half bed over in the dining room. I had no privacy, never did have any privacy. I had 3 brothers. They was all back there in that room, and Mother and Daddy had a room, and my older brother every now and then come in a little bit too drunk to go to the room, and he'd sleep on the couch, and that was our house. And everybody was just heavy at the house. You know what I mean? Just heavy. There's no conversations. There was it was just heavy. And you just came in, went to school, and came in and did your chores, and that was it. So when I saw they were being held and touched, I mean, something else clicked in me. It clicked in. I needed that. I needed to be held. I needed that touch. I needed that whatever was going on here. Something else clicked in. I was afraid it wouldn't happen. I had to watch the other girls to see how they manipulated and got over to hit their him, and how they got him, and what they did when they got. What did they do when they got him? And I saw what they did. They'd get those belly rubbing dances. You know what I mean? And they liked the slow ones, and they liked to, didn't they? Huh? He's about to fall out of his chair over there. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, it's just, you couldn't stick a hair down in between them. And it was like, that's what you do. You use your body. Now, I hope you're paying attention to me. I've told you now already. I'm addicted to excitement. I'm manipulated. I'm fear. I have no self-worth. I need this filling of my heart. On and on and on. My first time out in a honky-tonk. So, I say this a lot because alcoholics, if you feel such guilt about what you did to your wife, if you have all that hanging on you, remember, she had the glint in her eyes before you did. And remember what the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says? It says in there, when it's describing the disease, the doctor describes the disease, he says in there, right there, that alcoholics, number 1, are outright mental defects. They say in there that alcoholics are in full flight from reality. Full flight from reality, alcoholics are. And if you alcoholics ever turn around and look and see who's hanging on to you, don't leave me, don't leave me. Now, there's something wrong with this picture. Because, you see, I thought it was their fault. I thought if he would just straighten up, if he just wouldn't drink, I would be all right. And I told him that over and over and over and over and over. And when I read that, it was like, oh, I hope nobody sees this. Let me cover this up. It's like, take all of us Al-Anons down to your local loony bin and open the door and let us in there. To the outright mental defects. Our hearts is just going to start pounding. Oh. And let me tell you why it's going to. This is why it does. Because we match the alcoholic personality like a hand in glove. We just do. Al-Anons are weird. There's a first edition of Al-Anon Faces Alcoholism. You can't get it anymore because, oh, I don't want to start. We're in the book business, and they discard some and get some more, and on and on and on. But it says in that book, if you ever do run across it, maybe in a thrift shop, it says, it has been, now this is Al-Anon literature, and this is what it says. It has been known that that alcoholics marry some of the meanest women in the world. Don't clap, son. I was sitting in an open AA meeting, and I heard this alcoholic say this. He said when he took a drink, he had practically all the things I just said, full of fear. Y'all know what all these isms that make up an alcoholic. I love this. Jerry J. from Dallas said, he had a meeting one night, and he said, what makes up an alcoholic? And they went all the way around the room, and everybody shared, and they talked about the fear, the anxieties, the no self-worth, and all this thing that they talked about. And when they got around the table, he said, isn't it interesting nobody said alcohol? And they didn't. Nobody mentioned drinking. They were talking about all these characteristics. So the characteristics of an Al-Anon match that. His characteristics he had just talked about, and why he needed, what happened to him when he took the drink with all these characteristics. He said the drink went down, hit his stomach, stayed there a minute and went boom, come back up, lifted his shoulders, his head come up, his arms got big, he became a man, could do anything, it just was great. And when he said that, I flashed back, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. I'm in the honky-tonk. I beat out the blonde bitch, and I've got... and I've got the hymn that I had picked out for myself. And we're at the last dance, Sleepwalk. Man, that is the most magical song in the world. I have to explain it to the Yankees. I'm glad I'm here where I don't really have to explain. You know, it's the musical Sleepwalk, that steel guitar. It's just, oh man, and I've got my hymn, it's the last dance, and he's holding me, and God, it's just magnificent. And then he starts nibbling. Right here. And he says, sugar, I need you. Yes! Yes! I'm a woman! And I could take him home and show him delights that he's never even thought about. And he's going to fall in love with me, and everything is going to be fantastic. And I take him home and show him delights, and the next morning he disappears. And I'm hurt. And I can't figure out what's wrong. So I thought, well, his loss. I go back to the honky-tonk, go through this whole thing again, sit over here, watch them, pick him out, wait till about 11ish, just before he's falling off the stool, get him, do all watch the blonde. I finally get him, sleepwalk, I need you, go home, he disappears. And after a while, I'm thinking, there's something wrong with me. I wonder what it is, because they get them and they keep them. What's wrong with me? And you try harder, and you try harder, and I knew I was in trouble because I had already done everything that a Southern Baptist girl is not supposed to do. I wear lipstick, I wear makeup, I wear shorts on Sunday. I am no longer a virgin, and worse than that, I've danced. So you get this feeling, you know, I'm truly a piece of garbage. And I was like Madeline, you know, I just wanted to be decent. You know, I wanted to be a decent woman. I had dreams, you know, I wanted to be married. I wanted to have 2 kids. I wanted to have a house with a little picket fence. I wanted to bake cookies and make curtains and have my husband out, you know, doing the yard, and let's go into PTA and all those kind of things. It was a dream, and I knew it was lost forever. And I just didn't care. I just didn't care anymore. I wound up at a place called the Bloody Bucket. Didn't even open till about 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And there was some pretty bad folks out there. And I met my first major alcoholic. I've had 3 major ones and a lot of minor ones in between, but this was a major alcoholic. He had money. I had never seen money, and he was generous with it. And he was drunk all the time, and he was the cutest one. He was a bootlegger. He was a professional gambler, and he took care of me. And I started going with him, and I became pregnant by him, and then he moved me in to take care of me, and I stayed with him until the child was born. My little girl, I named her Tracy. There's as many Tracys in here as there are Carols, I'll tell you. And when she was born and was in the hospital, he came by and said, I don't want you to come back. I've taken care of you now, and I'm through. I just can't face this responsibility. And he left. Well, of course, I'm crushed. Another thing I can't stand is rejection, abandonment. There's not an Al-Anon in this room that's not terrified of being abandoned. That's why we stay all the time. You know, normal people don't do what we do. A normal person, the first time somebody pees in your closet in your clothes, they're out of there. What I do is just start sleeping a little bit lighter so I can wake up and catch him and point him in the right direction. I mean, it never occurred to me to kick him out and never see him again. This is my mental defect, and I love him. And we will do anything. I mean, we will lay down our dignity, we will lay down our souls, we will lay down our children. We will do anything, if you're an Al-Anon of my type, to keep that him in your life so I'm going to be okay. Nothing could get between me and that him. And for him to reject me is just unspeakable. It's just something I can't tolerate. So I had to do something to show him how deeply he hurt me. Al-Anons, some of you may not notice this, but Al-Anons are vindictive. I never called it vindictive till just a few years ago. It really dawned on me it was being vindictive. I thought I'd just explain to them how much they hurt me. I flaunted myself in front of him with another gangster across town that they just hated each other. And I wanted to make him jealous. I wanted him to see how bad he had hurt me. And what he did was, in his drunkenness, there was already, like I said, bad blood between them. He took a shotgun one night and blew this man's head off. And here I was with this baby girl. Now her dad's a murderer. It's splashed all over town. It's just, you know, Lubbock was a little small town then, and they were going to make an example, and it was just a real mess. And I just humiliated my parents to the nth degree. My mother said to me, I can still see her face, "Why don't you coming over here anymore? Pete, I don't want the neighbors seeing you come in and out. And if anybody asks you for our daughter, just tell them you're not." She belonged to the Rebeccas, and she had a state chairmanship coming up, and they had asked her to step down because they had read, seen, heard what I was doing, and they didn't want anybody with a daughter doing the things I was doing as a member of their state chairmanship representing the Rebecca Lodge. And boy, I can't tell you how bad I felt, because that was the only thing my mother had. Only thing she had was the Rebeccas. And they're a good Christian group, and I just felt, oh man. I said, okay, Mama, I won't. Of course, my dad would sneak around and see my daughter. He just adored her, and she him. He snuck around and saw her all the time, come get her. I decided I had to clean my act up, so I went over to the rodeo ground. It was in the 60s, you know, and they were burning flags and stuff. But I was in Texas, and we didn't do that stuff. And I was around cowboys, and they just drank whiskey. I mean, literally, I didn't know the 60s had happened until the 70s. I didn't, because we was all at rodeo grounds, or the rodeos were out West Texas honky-tonk, and there wasn't anything but whiskey and beer. So I didn't know it was a big deal. And I remember when Woodstock happened, and the churches had gathered up, and because some farmer was going to rent his, and all the churches in probably 10 counties marched on the farmer, and that was the end of that, and that's the only thing I know about the 60s. So here I am. This cowboy is going to do it. Do you hear me? He's going to do it. I'm going to figure out a way that I'm all right. It's got to be okay. I can't take this anymore. I am down to my last ABC. I'm down to it. And so I'm trying to do everything I can to hook this old cowboy. One night we're at the honky-tonk, and I don't know what I was fighting about. I was always fighting with him, and he was poking me in the chest, and that we had great big, those, what were they, brown quart beer bottles back then, because Lubbock was not wet, it was dry county. So they bootlegged these big old quart bottles. I just picked up one, empty one, popped it upside his head. Boy, just busted all over everywhere and brought him to his knees, and I ran out the door. I thought he might be a little bit mad, and he got up off his knees. And he came out and he caught me and said, "You know what?" He said, "You just met some sense into me. I think we ought to get married." Well, I want you to know, his shirt tail didn't hit his butt till he was married to me. I went and got some cookie mix and went and bought some material to make those. Bought him a lawnmower. It occurred to me I don't like to cook, and I don't know how to make curtains, and he was too drunk to mow the lawn. I knew how to be a good wife, and I was. I cooked him breakfast every morning. I mean, I cooked him, Bill and I were talking about it today. I cooked him homemade biscuits and pork chops and gravy, scrambled eggs and French fries, and I'd cook it and give it to him early in the morning, wake him up. And I'd make him a sandwich for go to work, and I'd write him a little love note about some things, the surprises he'd have, and I'd put it in wax paper and put it inside his bologna sandwich, and he'd take it to work, and he'd be in the middle of his sandwich, he'd take it out and he could show the boys, you know, and I was just such a sweet little thing. And he'd come in, and I'd have chicken fried steak and cream gravy and dinner rolls and salad and green beans I'd just picked and all this stuff. And I thought this was the magic, this was it. And it was a great marriage for the first 6 days. It was absolutely... And then Charlie came by and he was gone. He was gone for 2 or 3 days. And there I stood in my position at the window, you know, just, God, what's wrong with me? I can't figure it out. And I'd go chase him, I'd take the kids, and I'd find him in bars, and I'd find him here and there, and it just went on for a couple of years. It just got worse and worse and drearier. I quit going to the bars with him because we'd always wind up in a fight. I was always in violence. Both these alcoholics, I got in fights with them all the time. And I drank right along with them. When you're in the bar and you're out honky-tonking, you drink. And they'd be drinking and I'd be drinking. We'd get into a fight. I thought that was it. When I got married, I quit drinking. And I quit going to the bars. I thought maybe he'd stay home. And I tried every manipulation I could, and it just did not happen. And it just got worse and worse and worse. I had a son, and that just made it more hideous. And pretty soon this alcoholic cowboy of mine was just, you know, he passed the fun stage of drinking. You know, there was some fun stages of drinking. You go dancing and you have a good time and the warm glow's on, and that was great. But he progressed and progressed, and pretty soon he was embarrassing me and doing embarrassing things and throwing food at restaurants, or slapping me and knocking me down, and kids were just humiliated. They didn't want to go anywhere with him. And the neighborhood started watching and listening, so I started keeping the kids in the house or in the backyard, and I quit going out to any neighbors. And the drapes start getting a little bit closer, whatever the word is, and then you just get where you can't stand anymore. The disease of alcoholism takes over. It just takes over. And here I am again in a house where it smells real bad, and where it's quiet, and where it's heavy, and where my kids, I keep them in the back room all the time, in their bedrooms, the door shut. And when I can just slap one of them, if they just come up and say, I'm hungry, I never know when I'm going to slap them. They pretty well knew what their dad was going to do by whether he was drunk or sober, but they never knew what I was going to do. And I started feeling bad about, being a bad mother. And they looked bad, and they went off to school not fed because I was thinking or sleeping. I mean, it was the insidiousness of the disease. I heard a man say one time, alcoholism is the only known disease that affects those who don't even have it. I was sitting in my chair one day, and it was Thursday, and I had 2 black eyes and a busted lip, and the kids were in the back room, and he was gone, and he was going to come in the next day, and I surrendered. That day, I surrendered. I knew I could not do another thing. I was through. And by God's miracle, I went up, got the phone book down, looked up Alcoholics Anonymous, and called that number. I had read in the fall of '68, Ann Landers had written in there. Some woman had written in about her drunk husband, and she told that woman to call AA. And I had thought about that since like October, and here it is February. And I finally called, and I went over to this couple's house, and they talked to me, and they brought me into my first meeting. My very first sight and sound of AA and Al-Anon was this. The gentleman opened the door for me, and I was taken aback. Nobody had ever opened the door for me, and I mean, he was just stepping back like a gentleman would for me to go in, and I just stood there, and she finally was nudged in the door, and I walked in the door. And at the end of this long little coffee room was one of those old-timey cigarette machines, that you put in the money and pull, and it goes pop. And it has the lights. And the lights are glowing from this machine. It's glowing up. And there's 2 alcoholics leaning against that, talking to each other and laughing and poking. And I was just mesmerized. I heard laughter. And I hadn't heard laughter or felt the urge to laugh in so long. When you're in an alcoholic home, there aren't any sounds there, and there aren't any feelings there. When they came to tell me that he had shot this man and killed him, when I was given that news the pain was so deep and so hard and so heavy that I just immediately decided not to feel this pain and just swallowed, and that was it. And from that day, I learned how to not feel. You just don't feel. You don't accept this. It's not a feeling. This is not real. It doesn't hurt. I'll be okay. I don't care. Have you ever stuck your head up and said, I don't care? Doesn't bother me. All those things just start suffocating you when you're a human being that's trying to fight the disease of alcoholism and you don't know even you're even fighting it. So I'm in this room and there's laughter and there's this stuff that's in the room. I heard a woman say this. She said, every meeting has this magic. And if you're still long enough and watch and wait, you will feel the magic because it's here. And I believe it just was thrown at me that night because there was magic there. There was joy. There was a different feeling. There's excitement. There's the life, just like it is going on here all night long. There's been laughter here and people hugging and looking and touching and feeling. It's just magnificent. It's just, I'm in so much of awe of us and you. I can't hardly believe it. And that changed my complete life. As the big book says, I've just told you what happened, what it was like, and what it's like today. 30 years later, there is no way to describe it all. There is no absolute way. I went to that Al-Anon meeting. They started talking about the things that we talk about. I was told to get a sponsor, or they talked about sponsorship then. They didn't tell us back then. They just talked about it. But you learned real quick. I'm a quick study. I stay back here and look. You're supposed to get a sponsor, which I did. She's my sponsor and has been all these years. She was very kind at the beginning. She told me once she wasn't my babysitter and hurt my feelings. She's hurt my feelings a lot. Now, I've never ever let her know that. I've never got back in her face. I never argued with her. I've just never. For one thing, I respect her, but the other thing, I'm so afraid she'd throw me away. Because I always thought if she really knows who I am, she will not want to be with me, because that's the way most of the people in my life, when they really got to know me, they went away. And I was just terrified of her going away, so I never did anything except what she asked me to do. And she also told me this, and I know that it's true today. She wants more from me than I want for myself. And every sponsor's that way. If you have a sponsor that you hadn't gotten mad at, you better get another sponsor. If they're a yes, oh, you're wonderful, oh, it's okay, get away from them. Just get away from them. You better get a sponsor that doesn't care if they hurt your feelings, because if they hurt your feelings, it means they're loving you enough to tell you the truth so that you'll get better. And I had to get that concept in my head, and this woman is, she's hurt my feelings a lot, and she never really has cared. And I honor her, and I respect her. And she's an extremely important person in my life. She was the first person who ever said to me, and I knew that she meant it, and she didn't even know me at the time, hardly. She said, Vannoy, I really, truly love you. And I knew she meant that. It was the first person in my life who ever said, I love you. And I knew she meant that. And I can't describe the feeling that that gave to me. I was given a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and to read and to understand the disease of alcoholism, and we went through that thing, and we went through the steps and went through all the commitments. And you know, I was asked to wash the ashtrays. We used to have Coors is a beer out in Texas, and they gave us ashtrays. In every other chair there was an ashtray from Coors distributor, beer distributor. I always thought that was so unusual. And we had old green mugs. And the first thing she asked me to do was empty the ashtrays and the mugs and take them and wash them in the sink and put them in the dishwasher. And I was thrilled to death, because to do that meant two things. It looked like I belonged there because I was at the sink. The second thing was I didn't have to talk to anybody. I was busy. I was so afraid of y'all. If y'all knew who I was, I wouldn't be welcome here. I was just terrified of that. And I wanted to be here worse than any place I'd ever been in my life. That hour that I was there was magic, and I needed it and I wanted it. Still today. She took me through the steps. I was introduced to a God. I did not want a God. I did not know a God. Didn't want to things. I knew the Southern Baptist type, and that's all I knew. I knew that it made my dad go out in the backyard when the church people came. I knew it made my mother cry. What they were doing was bringing groceries and money because my dad was so broke. And they were supporting us, and I didn't understand that. I was too young as a kid. And so I didn't want anything to do with this God business because it was just, even if it was real, I'd be in too much trouble. So I was taught through the steps that there is a God, and I met this God, and He started changing my life. And I was sneaking around for a while going to these meetings, and then finally I told this little cowboy where I was going, and he was very upset. And for the next couple of years he tried to stop me from going every way he could possibly do it. If you're living with a practicing alcoholic, let me tell you something. If you don't go to these meetings, you're not going to have a marriage anyway. If you don't go to these meetings, your kids are not going to have a mama anyway. So you might as well come to these meetings because that's the only chance you've got. Because I used to feel guilty because the kids were upset because I was leaving. He was upset because I was leaving. And I was told over and over and over. But it was the only thing that gave me sanity. I was in this program for 7 years. He came for a little while, and then he decided he wasn't really an alcoholic and went back out to drinking. And I was here for 7 years. And the violence stopped the minute I got in. It was suggested that I keep my mouth shut. I did have a smart mouth, still do today. And to keep my mouth shut and start going to open AA meetings to understand what the alcoholic was going through in the disease. And those are the things I started doing. And I learned some compassion for this man. And I learned to quit getting in his face. And I learned to try to just be a good wife. It didn't matter what he was doing, I was told. I was supposed to be a good wife. I was told, and I know this is true because some people I know did this, the husband writes down everything he wants from his wife and all the things that's in his wife that he doesn't like. The wife does the same thing. And when you read those two lists, they're the exact same lists. The husband wants to be loved. He wants to be cherished. He doesn't want to be criticized. He doesn't want to be belittled. The wife wants to be loved and cherished. She does not want to be criticized or belittled. And it's just amazing how we want the same things. We don't have a clue how to tell the other person. We don't have a clue how to act this out, as they say. And I did all the things to be a good wife, and after 7 years of me trying this and him, the disease progressing, he come in one night and started beating me up, and I got all tangled up in the sheets trying to get away from him, and I hit the floor, my head bounced off, and as I looked up, there was my kids. Up until this moment, I did not know that my kids, you know how some of you grew up in this disease, well, no, I'm sure Madeline does. My daughter says she never put her head all the way down on the pillow. You don't put your head all the way down on the pillow. You don't always go into deep sleep because you've got to be ready. You've got to be alert because you never know. Those kids would wait till Daddy got in, and when they heard Daddy, then they'd wait to see if the fight was going to start, if it was going to be quiet. If it got quiet, it was even worse because they didn't know when it was going to explode. I didn't know this. And that night, they were there in 2 seconds, both my kids. And they were just dancing this little jig. And they were saying, Daddy, please don't hit her, please don't hit her. And I saw my kids. 7 years later, I saw my kids. Literally for the first time. I saw this pain on their face. I saw this bewilderment on their face. And I thought, my God, look at my kids. And it was just like scales. You know, we talk about denial. It was just flat denial. I thought I put them in the room. They didn't see, hear, experience this. So I escaped, and I left this man, and I got a divorce. One of the reasons I hadn't left is the as soon as syndrome that so many Al-Anons have. Friends, family say, why don't you stay with him? Why don't you get out? I'm going to as soon as. As soon as I get the car paid off. As soon as I get some money saved up. As soon as the kids get out of school. As soon as. And this night there was no as soon as left. I just left. One of the reasons I had to stay is I'm a high school dropout. I had no education. Had no way to support these two kids, and I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. All I did was walk around in a drugstore and sell tube of lipsticks to people, and that was it. boy, before I knew it, as soon as I surrendered, God stepped in. And I think that's such a miracle that I never can quite get. As soon as I surrender, God comes in and, solves the whole problem. But as long as I continue to try to do it, God leaves me alone. He leaves me to my own devices. And when they're through, He steps in. I was through, He stepped in. Next thing I knew, I was in nursing school. We were talking about it at the meeting. I can't remember y'all's things. It's Steps Tradition. STC group. Last night they were talking, and somebody was talking about being in school and had kids and single mom and how hard it was. And I said, I know. I was single and had 2 kids and trying to go through school. I got help from the AA group like you wouldn't believe. One was stopped by and gave me a tape recorder to tape the lectures. People were giving me money. Some guys at church, I had started going to church, they got together and put up this loan for me so that it would be secured. And just on and on. One of the guys worked for Texas Rehab, and he got me set up on that, and I was on welfare, and I hated being on welfare. Just hated all this stuff. But I went to my meetings. I mean, it was heavy-duty nursing school, but I never missed a meeting because I knew if I didn't go to those meetings, I wasn't going to make it. I graduated from that nursing school, and my class asked me to get up and give the class response, and it was just incredible. I mean, the room was full of my folks. Boy, my AA family was all over everywhere. It was a huge room, a lot of people there. And my mom and daddy were there. I'd made amends, as I was told to do, to these people, and they finally accepted those amends, and they had to be, it was long, and I didn't go in and say I'm sorry, and they said okay. It wasn't that way. I had to do some actions. I had to go over there every week, stay 10 minutes, and it was a cold 10 minutes, let me tell you. Whoa, I was so glad to get out of there. And then pretty soon they'd get mad if I didn't come by 10 minutes. And pretty soon, those living amends work. And I remember looking out and looking at my mom and daddy. I was thanking the families for helping us through this terrible year and how hard it was. And I remember looking down at my dad, and there was tears just rolling down his eyes. And their next-door neighbors were with them, and my dad punched him and said, "That's my daughter up there." I could read his lips. And it was all I could do to keep going on. And thought, they went from telling the neighbors that they didn't want me to come in so the neighbors see him, to bringing them to my graduation and tears of gratitude. And when I got out of that school, my dad right after that got cancer, and I was able to take care of my father and make those full circle round amends for him. I was the one at his side taking care of him and giving him a death of dignity, and he was really great. And everybody in my family was depending on me, the one that they didn't want around, and it was great. I had an older brother, Jimmy, who was an alcoholic, and he quit speaking to me 26 years prior to this when I had Tracy out of wedlock. He didn't speak to me, and when my dad was so sick, he came to me and he said, when Dad died, he came to me the first time in years, and he said, "Do you want me to go get your kids out of school?" And I said, "Yes, please, and tell them about Daddy." And that's the only thing he said to me in 26 years, "Do you want me to go get your kids out of school?" And I was so grateful. And I assumed that was the best way he could do anything for me during that time, because he was grateful I took care of our dad. And it was a hard time. But I got to take care of my daddy. Do y'all know what that means when you're Al-Anons like me and you'd shamed everybody? I got to take care of my dad. And my whole family was pleased with me. It was a magnificent time, even though it was a tragedy time. And a year later, my mother got married, and she was married to a great guy for 22 years. My daughter put her in her back room one day, and she came out. She was a teenager and a drunk. I mean, it was just... it was that quick. And we had some really hard years. Some hard years. My son, 11 years old, they called me at school, and he was... this still amazes me. He was sniffing Pam through a paper towel holder. See, I saw him a couple times. He looked weird, but I didn't think anything about it. He didn't smell like whiskey or beer, so I didn't know what was wrong with him. I came home one time, and Tracy, I came home unexpectedly. I was out of town for a weekend and came home early on Sunday morning. And Tracy had some of her friends over there. They weren't supposed to be there, but it was okay. And they were burning incense. I thought, that's sweet. They're burning incense. Well, it wasn't whiskey. I never smelled marijuana before in my life. I thought it was incense. And they were doing these things, and I started, now, a husband's one thing. But when it's your kids, well, that's different. I'm their mother. They will not be alcoholics. Do you hear me? We will do something else. Well, you can all imagine that journey. Those of you who are parents of alcoholics know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the most devastating thing in the world. It's just devastating. It just tears your heart out. It's just the guilt. You should have done this. You shouldn't have done that. I wish I'd done this. I wouldn't have done that. And pass on the disease. Didn't pass on. I mean, it's a nightmare. You just get where you can't stand them. And she got where she couldn't stand me. I mean, it's just fight. And God, it's just a nightmare. My daughter took off. She finally got into college and took off. And my son, his daddy kidnapped him one night. Didn't know where he was for a while. My son finally called, said, I want to stay with Daddy. We were talking about it today, me and one of the Carols. And, you sacrifice for these kids. You put up all this stuff, and you take them away from this big bad man. And you've just been such a good mother, and you've just done everything for these children. And now he wants to go live with that drunk after all I have done. And, well, I mean, screw you, kid. That's what I was devastated, but I didn't let him know it. So here I am, single, and got rid of those kids. Great. I'm fine. Thank you very much. I had to go to my sponsor and take an inventory on my motherhood, and there was a lot of stuff in there that I was really a bad mother. But there's always a lot of stuff in there that I was a good mother, and I had not stopped to see that. But the overriding thing was we were all eat up with alcoholism, and everybody was doing the best they could do. And I had to do that. And she said, the one thing that's bothering you most is when they have pain, you have pain. And you just don't want them to have pain, so you'll be okay. She said, what got you this program? I said, pain. And she said, that's what's going to get them here. Leave them alone. They have their path, and you have a path. God gave us all a path. If you get down on yours and try to get up on theirs, you don't belong there, and one of you is going to fall off. So stay off of her path and his path. So that's what I've done. I've left my children as best I can, one day at a time. I took this inventory, and she said, I want you in your prayer and meditation, take these kids somewhere in your mind and give them to God. And so I did. When we were going to church, I took my kids there once, and my son said, can we go pray for Daddy? And I said, yes. We went down to the kneeling rail where you went and knelt and prayed, and the pastor or the deacons would come and pray with you. And he wanted to do this for his daddy to get sober, and I said, sure. And we went down there this Sunday, and we prayed. And I remember how warm and good it felt with my children on either side of me. And so that day in prayer and meditation, I remembered that Sunday. So this is what I did. In my mind's eye, I took my kids to that kneeling rail and left them there. And from that day on, I just, as best I could, read July 1st in the One Day at a Time book every day and left them alone. And it's hard. It's so hard. That's why I have to come to meetings all the time. I was single and out running around and having a great time and trying to do my life a little bit different. I was not sleeping around. I was being a lady. The men in the groups taught me how to date and how to speak and how to act. It was great, and so did the women. And I learned to be a woman of dignity here. And it was a special, great time. And I met Jim Shaw, and we had a real quick romance. And I was going to move out to California where he lived, and at the last minute he dumped me, and it was a terrible time. I had some terrible consequences. I thought one more time, God doesn't love me, and this is a lie, this is a big joke, and I just felt terrible. And I went to my sponsor one day and told her the one secret that I had kept all these years, and that secret was, I am unlovable. And I felt like God had betrayed me because he made me unlovable. And she said, do you ever feel like you betrayed God? And I said, yes. And then I just bust out in tears. And she grabbed me up, and she's this little bitty thing. We were sitting out on a blanket, Brownwood, Texas, at a conference. And she pulled me over in her lap, and she started just rocking me, just like you would a little baby. And she was rocking me, and she said, Vannoy, I love you. I really love you. She said, if I can love you, God can love you so much more. And then I cried out tears I guess I'd had for 20 years. I cried and I cried and cried. And when I got up, I wasn't fixed, but I kept going to meetings, and pretty soon the forgiveness came, and I started realizing that I did have a part. I had to walk like a woman of dignity, like y'all had taught me to do. Jim came back in my life, and we got married. We moved to Oklahoma. He had 2 kids. I had 2 kids. They was all drunks. You could tell who was on the phone. Many of you know my stepdaughter, Sheila. She would call from California, and he'd say, hello. What? And I would know it was Sheila. I would pick up the phone. Hello. What? And he would know it was Tracy. That's how it was that bad. Sheila was unmarried and pregnant and drunk and called and said she was going to give this kid away to a foster home. That's all she knew. That's how she grew up. I said, no, wait, we'll talk to your dad. And we sent her a ticket, and she came back, and she got sober. She's married a young man, and they have another little boy now. She has 2 boys, and living a great, wonderful, sober life. She sponsors a lot of people. She's one of Madeline's sister pigeons, as y'all call them, and Peg's her sponsor, and she's here a lot, and she's just doing great. My daughter finally surrendered and went to AA. She made a 2-year wonder on the campus, and they got pregnant, and they got married, and then they got divorced, and Jim and I got them, and I have a great little granddaughter, and we went broke and moved back to California. We'd been here. We moved back to California, and Tracy and Charday came out with us, and Tracy was sober and doing great. She had 10 years of sobriety. We gave her a great, big, huge, wonderful party, and it was just fantastic. And 2 weeks later, she tried to commit suicide. Sober, very, very sober, and I need to remember that. She had tried that when she was right before she came to this program, but she was sober, and it just gave me a whole new perspective, you know, because I just thought, well, she's sober 10 years, she's always going to be sober. Sobriety is so fragile. It's a one-day-at-a-time thing, and I forget it, and I just assume, and I start taking, you know, my just dues because they're sober, and that's just. God, we all walk in such a miracle here. It's just God's grace that we're in every day, and I try so hard to remember that, but my mind gets to thinking, you know how we do. She got sober again, and let's see, just last year she decided to move over to Phoenix. She was living in L.A. and going to the Pacific Group with us, and then she decided to move over to Phoenix, which she did. She called me last May, and she said, are you sitting down, Mom? I said, what? She said, well, I ran off to Las Vegas last night and got married. And I said, to who? I mean, I didn't know she was even dating anybody. So she told me who it was, this little guy that she had met in Texas when we were home for Christmas, and I happened to know his parents. And I said, well, y'all going to live in Phoenix or what? And she said, no, we've got to hurry up and get back to Texas before his parole officer finds out he's out of state. Trust me, it's gone downhill since then. My daughter had 3.5 years sobriety. She had a great job. She had a magnificent, the car of her dreams. She had just gotten it like 6 months earlier, a little white, cute little sports car, top down. She had a dream life. She was shopping the best places. She was traveling. She was doing some speaking. She was sponsoring people. She just turned out to be a beautiful young lady. And they moved back to Texas, and about a month ago, she called me on a Tuesday. I was going to see her the following weekend. She said, Mom, I need to tell you something. And I said, what's that? And she said, I've been drinking. And she said, I'm going to see you this weekend. I need to tell you, I just spent the night in an emergency room. And I got beat up real bad at the bar last night, and I've got 2 black eyes and a busted lip, and I've got stitches across my face. And I went to see her, and that has been 30 days ago. And I saw my daughter, you know, beat up and black and blue, and I'll tell you, I need y'all so desperately. You know, I don't care if you got 3 days or 30 years. You know, you just never get over that kind of stuff. She's got a sponsor in there, and she's moved to Norman, Oklahoma, where Sheila is, and And I don't talk to either one of them. I just don't talk to either one of them. I say, oh, God, I can't do another sobering up. And I wish her well. And I know she's being well taken care of. 3 years ago, Jim had a plumbing company, and he was doing great. We had a lot of money, was rich. I loved being rich, just loved it. And we had bought a little house out in Palm Springs. We were going to retire, and he got feeling bad, and we took him in, and they diagnosed him with cancer, and 3 months later he was dead. And I got to digging around the office with the business manager, and the business manager disappeared, and I discovered we'd been evidently embezzled, and I found myself destitute. I lost my home. I lost everything. A couple of months later, my nephew was drunk and crushed to death at an oil well in Texas, and a couple of months later, my stepdad of 22 years died, and then a couple of months, been a year ago now, my mother died. So in 11 months, I lost 4 members of my family. We dismantled my mother's house of 50-something years and got rid of it in 2 weeks, and was back in California just spinning. Renting a room from a girl and standing there, and I'll tell you, it's just been so awesome. When one of us is wounded, how this fellowship comes to you. When they found out this was going on with my husband, they were there in droves, just droves. We were given money. I had to use borrowed money to bury my husband. I had to use given money to me to fly him back to Oklahoma. And people came and packed up my house, and people moved me, and I was just walking in fairyland. When I went back to Lubbock to bury my mother, people who did not even know me, because I'd been gone for a long time from Lubbock, were at the funeral. Because a few people did remember, and they told their babies and their babies and their grandbabies, and AA people were surrounding us. It's incredible what we do for each other. These Rebeccas came, and they were at the hospital with me when my mother died, and they have this special thing they do. They drape the flag over whatever, and they wait 30 days. That's in their bylaws. And these women came to me and said, we know you have to go back to California. We'd like to drape the flag earlier. We took a boat, and they'll do that for you. These same women who had, because of me, had asked my mother to step down, they invited me and my brother to come, and they had this special draping for my mom, and they all came in their little gowns. They all make these gowns. Every year is a different gown, and some of them look really, really bad. And they had these little, some of them had these little crowns on. And it was, I would just sat there, and I just thought, I'm the most blessed woman. I am so blessed, because these crowns, they're taking my mother to the kingdom, and she's a princess. And I've been forgiven. I found out just a little while before my mother died why she didn't like me. I asked God on the plane trip back when she was sick, please tell me why my mama doesn't like me. And he gave me the answer. My niece was there, and she was pregnant and was going to induce her with labor, and my mother said, don't let them do that. And she said, her face just contorted. They induced me with, when I was carrying Vannoy, and it was the most painful thing I've ever went through in my life. I thought, oh, was that all it was? And it settled something in here. My brother committed suicide and never forgave me, and something was settled here. I mean, my husband died and something was settled here. My daughter just can't find sobriety, and something settled here. My son's still drinking. He's been married, not married, but I don't really worry about him because he's always surrounded by untreated Al-Anons. I just don't worry about him. And I've had the greatest teachers that you could have teaching me. Bob White was one of those. Bob White told this story once, and this is why the Princess Crown means so much to me. He said in a talk one Sunday morning, he said, we say the Lord's Prayer after every meeting, and we close with that. And it starts off with our Father, and he said there's a line there that says the kingdom and the glory and the power. He said, claim your heritage, because any kid knows if there's a kingdom and it starts off with our Father, he's our Father, and that makes us children of the King, makes us a princess and a prince of the kingdom. Claim your heritage and start acting like one and start treating each other like one. The power is in each other in these rooms, and we give that power. And the glory is to God. And I thought at that moment, I am a child of God. That's what they've been trying to tell me here all this time. I am claiming my heritage. I am Princess Vannoy. I am a child of the King. And that's my heritage. It doesn't matter about all this other stuff. God's got it for me. You know, the best is yet to come. I'm convinced of that. Now, I'm a child of the King, and this is my heritage, and you're all the one that gives me that heritage. And for that, I truly, truly am blessed, and I thank you.